Hey, it's Michelle at Counseling and Recovery, and today I want to talk about, do you ever doubt yourself in recovery, like feel like you're not doing it right, or you're comparing yourself to other people? You probably already know this if you're in recovery, is that it's not a linear process. It's not something where you're going to put in a certain amount and you're going to get out exactly what you're looking for. Recovery isn't like that. It's about staying on the journey and putting forth the effort and then seeing what gifts are going to come to you. And I think, sometimes people really get stuck in comparison where they look at somebody else's strengths and they measure it against their own weaknesses. And, that's not really a fair comparison. But what is a good comparison is to compare who you are today to who you were when you started. Because even if it's just a year or a couple of months away, you probably can notice some differences. And that's the growth. That's the benchmark I want you to look at. Because comparing yourself to other people is just a way to beat yourself up, and it just doesn't work. Because their story is totally different than yours. So to expect you to be able to handle life the way somebody else does is really not fair. The other thing with recovery is that it's really something that takes time, and you may find that you're really good at self-care now, but boundaries are really difficult, or relationships are really difficult. And it can get frustrating if you think you should know it all by now. I know when I started, I had a lot of ideas about what recovery would look like 10 years, 20 years in the future. I thought my relationships were going to be perfect. I thought I was going to have the rule book and I would be all done. And then came 10, then 20, then 30 years. And it was like, no, that wasn't like that at all. In fact, it was the opposite. It was, now I can embrace that the process is imperfect. And yes, my relationships are a lot better. And yes, I know how to take care of myself and set boundaries, but it's not perfect. And there are times when I still struggle. And that's normal. So if you're struggling in your recovery and you're frustrated, that's part of the process, because when you think about living without substances or codependent behavior, there's a lot to look at, right? There's self-care, there's boundaries, there's how you pick people in relationships, it's how you communicate. There's a lot of life skill that goes into recovery. And to expect yourself to know it all in a matter of a few years or even 20 years is kind of a lot to ask. Because I was talking to James the other day, and I hope you're watching, and we were having a really good conversation about him being able to set really good boundaries and talk to men, but women were more challenging. And I could totally relate to that, because for me, it's reversed. I'm much more comfortable talking to men, but women sometimes can be challenging for me. And this is after 30 years of doing it. So it's like we all have our own histories that create what's harder for us. And that's where we have to have compassion for ourselves, because it's not going to look perfect. Recovery is messy. And there are days when I can wake up and go, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And then there are other days when I wake up and go, wow, I love recovery. And 98% of the time, I love recovery. It's just that 2% that sometimes I'm in a funk, or something didn't go well and I'm really disappointed, or I'm upset at myself for doing something. That's part of life. People that aren't in recovery struggle with self-doubt sometimes. So part of us, our plight in recovery is going to be sometimes doubting ourselves and questioning, what are we doing? But that's part of recovery, is to question, hey, you know what? Something isn't working right now. And, for me, I've gotten the biggest lessons from the biggest pains. I had a friendship blow up 4 years ago, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, even though while I was going through it, it was incredibly painful. But that's what I've learned in my recovery, is that when I'm going through a really hard time, there are going to be lessons and gifts out of that. I just can't control what they look like. I can't expect to get exactly what I want out of my recovery, because I don't know. All I can do is the footwork. And that's what I want to give you permission to do, is do the footwork and accept the results, because you are going to get gifts in your recovery. But expecting yourself to do it right all the time, there is no such thing. The fact that you're even in recovery, that's right. That's doing it right. Because so many people aren't doing this kind of work. because they're afraid. They think it's going to be a mark against them. There's still a stigma attached to personal growth for them. You know what? That's okay. Some people aren't meant to do this work, but you're here and you're doing the work, and that's what counts. And that's why I love recovery, because every day is different and some days are better than others, but it's being able to accept that is making the difference for me. And I hope it makes the difference for you. So I am going to attach my codependency prompts to this. If you are wanting to deepen your recovery, I also have a workbook that I've gotten some really great feedback on that walks you through self-care and boundaries and developing your intuition and looking at relationship patterns, because all of those things are part of recovery. And I really want to help you recover on a deeper level. So I'm going to leave the link to both of those items in the chat, or you can go to my website, counselingrecovery.com. All right.